Hi there. Good afternoon. Tank top today because it's hot here in Southern California. Santa Ana winds are blowing and the whole 9 yards. So trying to stay a little bit cooler today. Anyway, what I want to talk today about is what Georgianne and I just generically referred to as our bike trip. A couple videos ago, I spoke about my perspective on synchronicities, and in that, uh, one of Valerius's basic tenets is follow spirit without hesitation. So the bike trip was basically our exploration in following spirit without hesitation. So the story it's one of the neat stories of my/our life and our that period of our lives spiritually awakening and growing and evolving and the whole yada yada. Anyway, it starts out in Southern California. Georgianne's from Chicago, and I'm from Southern California. And so we were living in Southern California at the time, and we had been together about 2 years. And as I said earlier, that she said if she can put up with me for 2 years, she'll marry me. So anyway, we were living in this town in Moore Park, California. One of my sisters owned a store, a small retail store, and we worked there in the store with her. And we had, one bedroom apartment, our car, we had a van, and so that was that. So anyway, make a long story short, or let me just like get real, cut through this. This is just basic. We had an apartment, okay, and that's a one bedroom apartment. So when we got on the road, after I taught her how to drive, because she did not know how to drive from being in inner city Chicago, she did not know how to drive. Never, she's 25 years old, never had a driver's license. Uh, so I taught her how to drive, and then we did a search for trucking companies that ran specifically Chicago to LA, back and forth. Those were their main route because, we wanted to have family on each end. And so we landed a job out of Chicago. And so we started doing that. And we were doing that for a while. And then that's when we, started waking up. We ran into my sisters who are spiritually awake and were waking up at the same time. And that's a whole nother story that I'll share later. But they turned us onto this one book, and that led us to Hilarious and led us to our main waking up endeavors. So follow spirit without hesitation. And that and synchronicities go hand in hand because the synchronicities are clues upon your path of following spirit and allowing you to know or uh, informing you that yes, you're following spirit. That when you run across synchronicities, that you are on the right path. You're being led, or they're like I said in the last video, they're like little signposts along your path. That everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. And in following spirit without hesitation, here's the model that I use. And like I said earlier, I speak in models, and they're not the be all to end all. They're nothing's etched in stone. So this model that I use for following spirit, or my relationship with spirit first, I'll go that first. My relationship, or one's relationship with spirit slash higher self, big self, larger self, whatever label you want to put on it, that gives you life and breath, and that is greater than you, but that gives you life and breath. Like I said, that part of you, that aspect of you that runs this, because you're not it. Okay? So imagine yourself in a canoe going down a river. And, the river winds just like all rivers do. They follow the terrain, you know, and you're in the canoe and you're going with the flow. You have a paddle too. So In the illusion of free will, you can just go with the flow, go with the current down the river of life, the quote, river of life that you're traveling down, or you can take your paddle and in this illusion of free will, you can paddle cross current in either direction, or you can, expend a lot of energy turning the boat, your canoe around and paddle upstream against the current. It's your choice. That's the illusion of free will, because even while you're doing those options that you chose to do, the current is still taking you down the river that it's running. And you're just expending a lot of energy, but you're still going down the river. You're just making it hard on yourself. And that's the illusion of free will. Well, that's an option. Or you can just sit back and chill and go with the flow. So now, as you're going down the river, the farthest forward you can see down the river is as far as the next bend in the river. You can't see around the bend. You can only see straight line of sight. And as far back as you can see as you turn around, and as far back as you can see in the quote pass is as far as the last bend in the river. So your vision along the river of life is extremely limited to as far as the next bend and as far back as the last bend. And that's the best you can do with your quote senses as you go down the river of life, doing your thing. Now imagine that there's an eagle flying way up there, mile high. Eagles can fly about a mile high or better. And they have excellent vision. We all know that just biologically. Birds of prey, birds in general, but especially birds of prey, have most excellent vision. So imagine there's this eagle, and this eagle is your larger self, slash higher self, slash spirit, whatever label you want to put on it. And it can see infinitely more of the terrain than you can. And you're chilling along, just, doing your thing in the canoe, not expending energy going, cross current or against the current. You're just chilling. And the eagle comes down and lands on your shoulder and whispers in your ear. Talk softly in your ear, because spirit doesn't yell at you. Spirit doesn't bang you upside the head with a 2x4 to get your attention. Might have to sometimes, but in general, no. Spirit talks to you in a still, quiet voice. That's why you hear in the Bible, be still and know that I am God. You have to, there's meditation. Be still, quiet the mental body, and then you can hear the voice of God. In large quotes, you can hear spirit. You can hear your larger self talk to you, listen to you. You can communicate, but you have to be still, not running to and fro in the world. But anyway, so imagine that the eagle lands on your shoulder and just calmly talks to you in your ear and tells you it might be wise, doesn't demand, but just suggests it might be wise to head over to that shore right there, because right about over there, there's an opening, because all you can see as you're going down, all you can see forward and backwards. I forgot this part. All you can see forward is the next bend, and backwards the last bend. And then all you can see on either side of you is where the forest comes down to the shoreline of the river. And that's all you can see this way. So again, your view, 360 degrees, is somewhat limited compared to the eagle flying a mile high or better. So the eagle lands on your shoulder and suggests to you it might be wise, just a little ways up the river, there's an opening on this bank and there's a trailhead. It might be wise to to row over there, go up that trailhead, pick up your canoe and your oar, and go follow that trail. And that's the data that's given to you, and it's a suggestion. Well, you also have the option at that moment of going, well, no, I don't think I want to. I'm having a good time just sitting here, chilling down the river, just flowing, going with the flow. If I go over there and get out of the river and follow that trail, carrying my canoe and my oar and my backpack or whatever, that's a lot of work. Well, that's your option. Well, what you don't know because of your limited vision compared to the greater vision of the eagle slash higher self, larger self, is that about a half mile down the river that you can't see because there's a couple bends in the river before you get to it. There's a waterfall. Oops. Well, now or not even that drastic. There's a set of rapids. Now when you get to the rapids, if you decide to ignore spirit and be willful and do it your way, when you get to the rapids, you might be able to get off the river before you get to the rapids, before you get caught up in the rapids. Or if you get caught up in the rapids, you might survive traversing the rapids. But then again, you might not. So that's why it's a suggestion. And it might be, the suggestion is it might be wise to follow that trail because following that trail will take you up and around and put you back on the river and bypass the rapids or the waterfall. It's your call. So the suggestion from Hilarious is follow spirit without hesitation. Just do the next thing when you get the data. Just do the next thing and trust. Again, like I said, the Bible says, have the faith of a little child. The Bible's description of faith or definition of faith is calling things that aren't as though they are. Calling things that aren't as though they are. Having faith in larger self has your best interest in mind, regardless of what it, quote, looks like to you with your limited vision, your limited view, your limited perspective. Trust and have faith that the larger you has your best interest in mind. So, following spirit is, without hesitation, is get the data and act on it as best as you can. So, with that said, we're in the truck, and we're running team. We're both driving. One sleep, one drive, and because I taught her how to drive a car, and then I taught her how to drive a big truck, and so we hired on as a team. And matter of fact, when we hired on, the company didn't know she knew how to drive. They sent us out on our first load, and I had to teach her how to drive a big truck on our first load. But that's a whole nother story. That's a fun one. Anyway, we managed, we survived, and so we're both running team. We're both driving, so we're both drawing a paycheck. So we're making good money. We when we went to Chicago and hired on. Remember, we live in Southern California, so we had an apartment's worth of storage. We put all our apartment in storage, so we had an apartment's worth of storage, and everything that we took to Chicago was in the van. We moved to Chicago and hired on, and we basically lived in the truck that we were assigned. It was a nice big truck with the sleeper and the whole 9 yards, and we knew what we were getting into because I had been out on the road before. I met Georgianne, so it's like I knew the ropes. I knew how to do it, and she was willing to go along. So we lived in the truck. Now we didn't have an apartment, and what we couldn't fit in the truck, we put in the storage unit in Chicago, or yeah, in Chicago. So we had apartments worth of storage here, and portion of that in a smaller unit in Chicago, and we just paid the fees, the rental on the storage unit every month. But we just ran back and forth, Chicago to LA. Make both drawing a paycheck, just hitting it, week after week after week. When we wanted some time off, we'd stay either in a motel of our choice, wherever, on either end, or if we want to visit family here for a day or two, we just park the truck, get in the motel, and tell dispatch we're taking a couple of days off, and we do that. Or We do it in Chicago, park the truck, and stay at our grandparents' house. So anyway, so we're doing this for about 2 years, and we're banking a lot of money. And so when we got on the road, we had a credit card, and we had $1,000 limit on it. And so we didn't use it much because we had a shitload of money. You know, so when we decided, we got the direction from Spirit. We're already under the tutelage of Valeria. And so we got the direction from Spirit to do the bike trip, our exploration and following Spirit without hesitation. Just do the next thing. So what we did is we bought a 21 speed tandem bicycle. You know what a tandem bicycle is? 21 speed. It was a top of the line bicycle. We bought one of those baby carts that you can hook to the back and put your kid in. You've seen them, they're red and yellow, bright colors, so you don't miss the trailer behind you. So we bought one of those. We went to REI and we bought all top of the line camping gear, tent, everything, camping stove, everything. We had stopped on the way in Missouri to there was this one spot in Missouri along the interstate that we can get off and on real easy that was a military surplus. We stopped there and we've got big Army field jackets and a bunch of other gear. And we basically outfit, because, I'm not an idiot, we basically outfitted ourselves very well. The fact that we had a lot of money, because we've been ripping around down the highway, we were able to afford all of this and, get good quality gear. And so then we took all of our remaining, the credit card, we paid that off it had a $1,000 limit, and we paid it to zero, and we just had that as a backup. We took all of our remaining cash when we were ready to roll, and we converted them to traveler's checks. And our destination, as far as we knew, was leave out of Chicago. Now, mind you, this is in October, going into winter. But we just, then we just follow Spirit. This is the gist according to the timing. So we US 51, US Highway 51 runs due south out of Chicago. And it runs all the way south through a bunch of states down to Mississippi or New Orleans. I think it's somewhere in Louisiana, but it runs due south out of Chicago, US 51. And so that was our plan. We had got a KOA, the KOA campgrounds. We had stopped and got a KOA campground directory. So that's what we would stay, in campgrounds. That's i.e. all the camping gear. So we had got outfitted and all ready to go, and so we headed out one day. We had told our boss that we were quitting and the whole 9 yards, and this was our next to do. Well, at this time, we were nimish and nephish. I've shared with you about the different aspects of ourselves coming in and through entrainment bringing us up to, like that. Well, at this point, we weren't Michael and Georgianne. We were nimish and nephish. And not the owner of the company, but the operations manager of the company, the trucking company. You just generically in the trucking industry refer to him as the truck boss. Well, this guy, Roger, our truck boss, super cool dude, gave us tons of latitude because he knew we were stand-up people. And so we told Roger, and even we were driving truck when Nimish and Nephish came in, and we shared that with, all the dispatchers and with the company, the owner of the company, and everybody. We just told them, this is who we are. Some people wouldn't buy it, didn't believe us, yada, yada, that was okay. But Roger made his best effort to always refer to us as Nimish and Nephish when he was talking to us. when we were doing company business, it had to be Michael and Georgianne Green, So that was understandable, on our log books and everything else. But when Roger would speak to us face to face, he, to the best of his ability, tried to refer to us as Nimish and Nephish. And I love him for that. And I know that he was part of our soul group, which I'll have, that's a whole nother talk. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in that position to do that for us. So anyway, uh, so we head out. We stop by the office on the way out, and then we pick up US 51. And we start heading south, and we pedaled. Oh, it was about 4 or 5 days or so, and we pedaled on the average of. We weren't in a rush because we didn't have anywhere to go, nowhere to be. Everything we everything that we had in storage in California, that apartment's worth of storage, we stopped by there, picked up a few personal items, and everything else, furniture, everything, we donated to charity because we no ties. Okay, we're following spirit without hesitation. So we everything. We just got rid of everything. Donated. Didn't even try to sell it. No yard sales, no garage sales, no auctions, no nothing. Just donated to charity. And I mean, we got like some photo albums and a couple stuff out of storage, and that was it. The storage that we had in Chicago, we did the same thing. Cleaned it out, took what little we wanted out of their personal stuff, and the rest we donated to charity. And then we headed out. So when we left Chicago on our bike, heading our bike trip, and like the everything we owned, we was with us. All of our clothing we had with us. Everything we owned in the material world was on that bike or in that cart. Because what I did with the baby cart, the trailer, is I converted it into a cargo cart. And we had and when it was about this high, when it was all packed up and tarped and bungee corded down and real secure. Remember, I'm masquerading as a truck driver. I know how to do this stuff. I know how to secure stuff, secure freight. So did a really good job. And so we started pedaling south. We would travel about 25 miles a day because we weren't in a rush. And about 4 or 5 days, maybe a week into it, we're like coming up on, I think it was, I forget the town. It was some town. But anyway, we're at a KOA campground, and we had been there like 2 days or so. In our tent, and they've got everything set up. We've been there about 2 days. We had a cooler that we would stop, and all our perishables would be in the cooler, and we'd stop and keep that iced up. We had our water, like I said, our camping stove, and our dry goods. On the bike, we had saddlebags on the front and on the back, so we had all our dry goods in the saddlebags. The whole thing, we were set. It was a cool deal. So, hold on. We're at this campground, and we've been there a couple of days, and I'm getting antsy thinking, oh no, it was just opposite. There was a storm coming in, and I'm thinking I don't want to get caught out on the bike out on the road pedaling in this storm. So I'm telling Georgianne, why don't we chill, and ride the storm out here in the tent in the campground where we're already at and set up. And she's just going, no, I don't know why, but we got to go. It's time for us to go. And I'm thinking to myself, now this doesn't make a lot of sense. And then I hear in my head, follow spirit without hesitation. So I looked in, I said, okay, let's go. So we packed up everything and we headed south that day. Well, about halfway out of there, the storm comes in, starts coming in. The wind always comes before the storm. This wind, I mean, we're pedaling like this against the wind, and it's like, 21 speed bicycle, and I'm in the lowest gear to where our feet are going like this, and we're going like this, we're barely moving. It was rough. We're leaning into the wind, because it's coming broadside at us. And so we get to this, we pedal and we pedal and we pedal, and then we get to this town as far as we can go, but there's no KOA campground. We're not far enough to the next campground. So we said, okay, we're going to have to stay in a motel tonight, you know. So there was this Red Roof Inn. So, we were going over there and we checked it out. And so we said, okay, well, let's go find a grocery store first. And we got to, stock up on some of our supplies. So we did that. We pulled up to this grocery store and went inside, did our thing. And we come back out and we're over by our bike in the parking lot, and we're taking all the dry goods. You know how they're in a cardboard box, but then they have this inner lining with the actual product in there. Well, to save space and for packing, we would take all of that out and just pack that into the soft saddlebags, and then discard the cardboard packaging. And so we're doing that, and we've done it several times. So we got a little routine down, and we're doing our thing. And we're in our, green army field jackets, and we hear this voice behind us goes, "Do you guys need a place to stay?" So we turn around, and there's this dude standing there, and he's got on an identical army jacket. And we just looked at him, we looked at each other, and we just started smiling. That's why we had to go. Follow spirit without hesitation. Synchronicities are tied in all the way. Seeing this guy, his name was Mike. Now that's my birth name, and that's the name that I went by, Mike, before Nimish came along. So, quote, we got the same names, and we're all three wearing the same jackets. Well, we had enough awareness, enough veils removed to see the synchronicity and see that this is the purpose why we had to leave. Because Georgianne could not, all day long, she was apologizing. As we're pedaling down the road, struggling against the wind, she's back here behind me, just struggling as hard as I am, constantly apologizing. Mike, because it was Mike at the time. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We should have stayed. Oh, we should have stayed. But we're already there. We're already in it. So it's like, as soon as we saw Mike standing there, we just kind of nodded at each other and smiled and go, okay, this is it. Well, it turns out this guy, Mike, was a caretaker of a campground. Now, there were no KOA campgrounds around where we were, but there was a campground, a really big, nice campground. Have you ever heard of the Moonies? Reverend Sung Young Moon and his church, the Moonies? They had outside of that town, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of that town. They had this big old huge campground, acres upon acres upon acres, big old lake on the campground, the whole 9 yards. And he was the only one there. He was the caretaker between periods, between and the members of the church would rotate the caretakers, and he happened to be his turn. And he happened to be in town, and he saw us, and he saw what, he took in what we were, and he asked, "You guys need a place to stay tonight?" And so we said, "Yeah, we'll take you up on that." So we followed him he got in his pickup after we got all set up. He got in his pickup and drove slowly, and we followed him outside of town all the way to the campground. He unlocked the gate. We went in. He locked the gate behind him, followed him all the way up the trail to the main house where he was staying, and then we kind of looked around with our flashlight and stuff, and we found this gorgeous, gorgeous spot right off the lake, and that's where we set our campsite. And then we sat around and talked to him for a while that evening, and then he went to bed and we went to bed. Next morning, after he put himself together and we put ourselves together, he came out to the campsite, to our little campsite, and because it wasn't right next to the main house where he stayed, it was a little ways away, and nice little walk, but not real far, within sight, but not right on top of him. But anyway, so We ended up spending the whole weekend there, which was exactly where we were supposed to be. One of the things that we did at that weekend at that campsite, like I said, it was a big, big place. Not just a few acres, but several square miles of campground. There were a bunch of old cabins, and in our wandering around, we ended up clearing a bunch of cabins, energetically clearing out and sending energies and entities to the light, beings that had died and couldn't leave there. If you know what I'm saying, spirits that had passed but couldn't leave the property, but needed to be assisted on their next step, and we just sent them to life. We actually cleared 3 different cabins and just areas of space where we could just walk around and feel the energy and know, okay. And we were into toning and just trusting spirit, doing the next thing, and we would tone and just feel the energies, speak to the energies, speak for the energies, and send them to the light. Kind of like with the rescinding of vows, that particular step, and we had a really good time. And like I said, we stayed 3 or 4 days there, and they had showers and the whole 9 yards. Because it was a campground, so they had public showers and stuff, and it was really cool. So anyway, when we left there, we kept pedaling south, and we had a few more nice incidences, but we finally got to the little town of Champaign, Illinois, and felt like we we got a motel. There were no, I think there was a campground there, but we got the direction to get a motel room. So we quote we're good at following spirit without hesitation. We get the data and we just act on it. And so we did. And we stayed, we got a motel room. Like I said, we had the $1,000 credit card. We had multiple thousands of dollars in traveler's checks. Because spirit, didn't throw us to the wolves, because higher self always has your best interest in mind. Whether you believe it or not, the eagle always has your best interest in mind. And larger selves, higher selves, was not going to have us do this excursion, because like I said, it was our exploration in following spirit. Wasn't going to have us go out there and throw us to the wolves, have our ass hanging in the wind. Made sure that in divine timing, according to the divine plan, we were in the right place to be able to do this financially and spiritually, but everything. Made sure we had the finances, so we're not out here on the side of the street with our thumb out here begging, or some stupid shit like that. So we ended up staying in that motel for like 2 weeks or so. Might have been 3 weeks, but it wasn't time to go. We did a lot of work there, spiritual work, clearing and, learning, because, we're still studying under Larius. We had, back in the day, everything was on cassette tapes, and we had a little Walkman like cassette player. I made sure that I went to Radio Shack and I got where you plug into the cassette player. I got one that was a dual, and it split, so you could plug 2 sets of headphones and both simultaneously listen to the audio tape. So we're still studying under Larius, the whole 9 yards, all through the bike trip. Well, everything, we did what we did, and then at one point, we got the direction, it's time to go. But it wasn't time to go on the bike and keep going. It was time to go home, go back to Chicago. And we're like, what? Go back to Chicago. Well, we're following spirit without hesitation. So I called U-Haul, caught a cab to the local U-Haul place, rented a the smallest truck they had, and we packed our bike up. We didn't pedal back to Chicago. We packed the bike up, all our gear, and we drove back to Grandma and Grandpa's house. And when we got back to Chicago, I made a phone call to Roger, the truck boss of the company that we had quit. I said, Roger, you got a truck open? He goes, yeah, I got a truck and I got a load for you guys when you're ready to go. I said, we'll be over there tomorrow. Bigger than shit. One phone call. We got not back in the same truck we were in, but he had a truck open and he had a load ready to put underneath that truck or put that truck underneath. And he knew this is a couple I can count on. Actually, we were the only team in that whole company, and he knew I can count on these two. And he said yes. So the next day, Grandpa, we stored the bike at Grandpa's house. Grandpa, we put all our gear in his van, and he took us out to the yard. We walked in, and Roger goes, "I never did take you off the personnel file." He goes, "You just change trucks, and we'll pick up where we left off." And we just smiled then and go, "Thank you, Roger." We moved into the truck, got underneath that trailer, and we headed out back to California. Didn't miss a lick. The universe supports you always, whether you know it or not, in ways that you know or not, you don't understand or recognize. There's people in your lives that support you, that are specifically there to support you. And you may not have a clue who they are, or they might be some of the closest people to you. I always had a phrase. I'm in awe and wonder of the workings of spirit. Just because you can look back in hindsight, and I'm gonna close with this one little piece. You can look back in hindsight and see the workings of spirit. I'm gonna turn it all the way back around to follow spirit without hesitation. Now listen to that phrase, and I'm gonna break it down, deconstruct it. When you're following spirit, imagine you're following your dad and your little kid. Remember, have the faith of a little child. And your dad's not going to steer you wrong. He's not going to lead you into trouble. So you're following, meaning he's in front of you and you're following behind him. And every once in a while you can peek around his legs or peek between his legs and kind of get a glimpse of what's going on up front. But he's up here and he's leading the way. And you are following without hesitation, doing the next thing, following his lead. Now because you're behind, you can always look back, and hindsight being 2020, you can see where you've gone, where you've come from, and how you've traveled. And I guarantee you, if you're following spirit to the best of your ability, without hesitation, when you look back in hindsight, it couldn't have been done any better. You would have screwed it up. At least I know. That's the deduction that I've come to. I'd have totally fucked that up. But I look back and I see the perfection of how everything just fell into place that I couldn't see because I'm following. I'm not leading. I'm following. So I don't know where we're going, but I can look back and see where we've been, and I can see the perfection in all the moves. And that's why I say I am always, always in awe and wonder of the workings of spirit. And then that too is continual evidence for your mental body that larger self kind of knows what he's doing, or knows what she's doing, or knows what it's doing, however you want to phrase it. And it just takes a load off. Takes a load off. Because I tell you what, running around this world trying to figure everything out, which is the primary urge of the mental body, trying to predict and control when it doesn't know shit and has very limited scope of data, It's so much easier to just relax, go with the flow, and follow Spirit without hesitation. Life is so much easier. Okay, I'm gonna leave that, but that was one of our adventures. And like, oh, and check this out. In hindsight, because we didn't know, but in hindsight, check this little tidbit out. From the day we left Chicago to the day we got back to Chicago was 40 days and 40 nights. That was our 40 days in the wilderness. Is that cool or what? The bike trip was our 40 days in the wilderness. That just warms my heart. Okay. Love you guys. Blessings on your journey. I will talk to you soon.